This is what it looked like in Iqaluit today. Schools and offices were closed, the power was out, and water, sewage, and garbage trucks were pulled from the road, all because of this blizzard. Environment Canada says wind gusts early this morning hit more than 80 kilometers an hour. It's expected to stay windy tonight and calm down to 30 kilometers an hour, gusting to 50 tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. Charges have been laid in a motor vehicle collision that resulted in the death of Yukon Deputy Minister Michael Prochaska and severely injured Minister Niels Clark. RCMP say a vehicle on the Alaska Highway south of Whitehorse struck another vehicle entering the highway on August 2nd, 2024. Police say Robert James Smallwood has been charged with 2 counts of criminal code dangerous driving offenses and 2 counts of careless driving and driving at an unreasonable speed. Smallwood will make his first court appearance on June 25th. Barging season is set to begin next month in the Northwest Territories, but there's some anxiety in communities that rely on those shipments. Years of low water levels across the north have led to multiple cancellations. Now, the government of the Northwest Territories says it's exploring a plan B. The CBC's Nadir Hashmi explains.
The government of Northwest Territories say they're working on a backup plan if barge services needs to be cancelled this season. Communities that rely on barge shipments have had to make alternative plans in recent years after low water levels on the Mackenzie River cancelled sailings. Supplies have already been trucked into several Sahtu communities by the Winter Road, but a marine transportation official says it won't be enough.
That's somewhat alleviated, but it still doesn't, there's still going to be a need for barging fuel for sure.
Camsell says normally goods are trucked from Enterprise to Hay River. They are then loaded onto barges and shipped to communities along the Mackenzie. But getting past the rapids near Fort Providence becomes a problem when water levels are low.
So that's the key. We can't even get into the Mackenzie, so to speak. And if that's the case, we're going to look at having a contingency plan to ship goods for the Sahtu region.
He says the current backup plan is to truck goods directly to the Dooley Ferry crossing near Wrigley and load them onto barges there. From that point, a private charter company would take over.
We don't have any tugs there, but we'll use some chartered tonnage from Cooper Brothers Transport, hopefully.
The charter company will then take the cargo from the Dooley Ferry crossing onwards to Tulita and Norman Wells. But Camsell says they'll still need help from the Canadian Coast Guard to set up buoys, which are used for safe navigation on rivers.
It's only a small stretch of the river, but we need about 30 buoys put in there.
Jeremy Hennessy is the spokesperson for the Canadian Coast Guard. In an email to CBC, he said it's too early to predict any barge cancellations. Hennessy says there's still ice on Great Slave Lake and the Mackenzie River, so the buoys haven't been installed yet. If the water levels are low, Hennessy said they will, quote, adjust its operations as necessary to reflect the conditions of the river. Camsell says he's meeting with the Canadian Coast Guard this week to talk further about this plan. With water levels getting harder to predict each year, he says there's still no long-term solution in place just yet. Nadir Hashmi, CBC News, Yellowknife.
As plans for barge season take shape, NWT ferry season is starting. The Liard River Ferry started running today. It runs from 8 a.m. until midnight daily. Further north, the Peel River ice crossing on the Dempster Highway is on a 72-hour closure notice. That means it could close at any time. DriveNWT.ca is the place to check for any updates. It's been nearly 2 years since a wildfire tore through the hamlet of Enterprise, Northwest Territories. It destroyed homes and scattered residents. Now, 2 years later, the emotional toll is still being felt. Carla Ulrich has that story.
You felt like it was a community, right? You go there Sunday morning and walk your dog and talk to your neighbors and whatever, right?
Charlie Sutherland lost everything in the Enterprise fire, his home, vehicles, and the life he'd built for 15 years. Although he is one of the few who have been able to rebuild, he says it's been hard to fully recover.
But I never had anything hit me so hard in my life. It just changed a person's attitude in life and whatever, right?
Kathy Beaupre has lived in Enterprise since losing her home in the 2022 flood that devastated Paradise Gardens just outside Hay River. That house was spared by the wildfire, and she says she's grateful to still be in Enterprise. Beaupre says she plans to keep rebuilding her life in the community that took her in. And although the hamlet has a long way to go, she feels optimistic.
It's been stressful since the fire. Of course, many people lost everything, and that's hard to deal with. I understand that. I feel like the community's coming along slowly, but in any tragedy like that, there's going to be bumps, right?
Pat Coleman and his wife moved to Enterprise in May 2023, hoping for a fresh start. They also lost their Paradise Gardens home in the flood the year before. He says the community is noticeably quieter and scattered, and the emotional weight is still heavy.
Everybody's mind is still caught up in what the events of the last 2 years, so it bothers people probably more than they think it did, even though they probably don't admit it.
But Coleman, who first moved to Enterprise in 1979, says the hamlet is and always has been defined by determination and resiliency.
It's a pioneer sort of a attitude, Enterprise. It's not like Enterprise was built on a couple of gas stations at a crossroads. It's not a remote community or anything, and it was always like go-getters that were here, and I don't think that's going to change.
Carla Ulrich, CBC News, Enterprise.
The wildfires in Manitoba continue to burn out of control. The names of the 2 people who died in the Lac de Bonnie fire are now known. They are Sue and Richard Noel. Hot and dry conditions are making it tough for crews to get flames under control. Cameron McIntosh has the latest.
Wildfires still burning around Lac de Bonnie. This TikTok video shows how intense it was on Tuesday when Sue and Rich Noel, seen here with their 2 sons, were trapped on their property and died in a fast-moving fire.
It's heartbreaking for so many people here.
Shane McCoy and his wife knew them both.
The way the fire was coming at such a high rate of speed, if people couldn't actually see where it was coming from, it could hit us so fast.
RCMP say the fire was so intense they couldn't answer a rescue call to that property. The loss being felt in Lac de Bonnie, where the deaths and sheer intensity of the fires has shaken everyone.
It's probably the first time in my life that I can remember it being to this extent, this close to the community.
At the Manitoba Legislature, the flag is at half-mast in a light smoky haze over Winnipeg.
We lost lives in Manitoba yesterday. This is a serious situation.
Premier Wab Kinew says established protocols are being followed to notify area residents of evacuation orders. More than 1,000 people are out of their homes. Manitoba is also now requesting up to 80 out-of-province firefighters.
And I think everyone will understand that we are going to definitely take the cautious and safety-minded approach.
That includes shutting several provincial parks, including the Whiteshell, where another fire bordering Manitoba and Ontario can be seen across this lake. It's already burned cottages, the entire park being evacuated as a precaution, closing cottages, campgrounds, and seasonal businesses for the May long weekend.
I understand, I said, with the conditions we have that, we have to have a shutdown in the park.
The forecast is calling for rain and cooler temperatures, but say fire officials, likely not enough to knock these fires down. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
We're seeing wildfires grow in many parts of the country right now. And as they do, there's confusion over the word itself. Many are still not sure about the difference between a forest fire and a wildfire. Fire officials in BC are taking to social media to help clear the air. Joanna Wagstaff breaks it down.
Okay, so there's a fire somewhere in a forest. Is it a forest fire or a wildfire? Is it too dramatic to call it a wildfire? What if humans started the fire? Is it a human-made fire in that case? Who gets to decide what we call a fire? As someone who has covered many wildfires, there's a simple answer here. Wildfire is actually the most accurate word. A wildfire is any unplanned fire in a natural space. It could be a forest, grassland or muskeg. It could be started by people, and it could be totally out of control or already contained. Here, the word wild doesn't mean out of control. It means out in the wild. Same way we say wildflower or wildlife. Even if some online commenters disagree about when and how to use the word wildfire, the science world is in agreement here. And as wildfire season ramps up across the country, getting the language right actually matters. The BC Wildfire Service recently posted on Facebook calling out confusion and straight up misinformation about the word. The response was massive.
Yeah, we had a lot of positive response of people who were saying things like, thank you, I'd actually always wondered exactly what this meant. And people who were also grateful or expressing gratitude that they could then use that information to counter misinformation that they were finding in their own lives.
So this kind of pushback isn't totally new. Wildfire officials say it's been growing louder over the last few years.
Anecdotally, we have seen in recent years more misinformation. Typically, we tend to see this kind of engagement when there's other contentious topics that are happening. People are stressed, people are anxious. For example, a lot of the engagement that we've received recently speaks to the federal election. Often we'll see upticks around the American federal election, the provincial elections, the COVID-19 pandemic, any of those kind of big society-wide discussions or things that make people feel anxious or uncertain. And that's one of the big reasons why we've wanted to focus so much on public education.
Bottom line, the fires are just getting started, and so is the effort to clear up the confusion.
A teacher in the Sawtoo region of the NWT says rent increases are driving teachers out of the territory. Increased notices began circulating last month in rental units run by Housing NWT, many of which house teachers. Jocelyn Chappelle has that story.
A teacher in the Sawtoo says Housing NWT notified him of a significant rental increase, an increase higher than what has been announced publicly. CBC News granted the teacher confidentiality due to fear speaking out would affect his living situation. The teacher says the way Housing NWT has been presenting the change is deceiving. Housing NWT has been saying the highest increase is $500 for a 3-bedroom. The teacher says that's not true. His rental notice shows a nearly $700 increase for his 1-bed apartment, and he isn't the only one. CBC News has seen multiple increase notices showing higher rates than what Housing NWT released. In a statement, the Housing Corporation addressed the differences. They say their rent scale doesn't include some additional costs. Housing NWT called these special arrangements, where they cover water, sewer, and garbage for some tenants. The Sawtoo teacher says the price change is just too much. He knows multiple coworkers who are looking to move out of the territory as a result, and he plans to join them. Jocelyn Chappelle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Power bills in the Yukon could be going up. Yukon Energy is seeking regulatory approval for more than $350 million worth of system upgrades. Much of the company's infrastructure is aging and struggling to meet growing energy demand. More than half the proposed increase would pay for a major overhaul of the Mayo hydroelectric dam. The project also includes money to finish building a grid-scale battery in Whitehorse. The rate hike would mean an annual increase of $25 to $30 for most residential customers. Yukon Energy's CEO says government funding would help cushion the blow for ratepayers.
Typically, electrical infrastructure gets paid for in two ways, right? So it gets paid for by ratepayers or it gets paid for by the taxpayer. So we've seen really strong examples of that. And even in this application, we've seen a strong example through the battery project. So there was some funding received for that. You know, that really offsets the costs that get passed on to ratepayers. And we're certainly working with government to support the Mayo project in particular to help offset the future pressures that would come to ratepayers for covering large projects such as that.
The rate increase must be approved by the Yukon Utilities Board. Yukon Energy says the board's decision isn't expected until early next year. CBC News has learned that Canada is ramping up its military presence in the Arctic and roughly doubling the length of training missions. As Murray Brewster tells us, it may be an opportunity for the country to promote its sovereignty.
Showing the flag in Canada's far north. where even the simplest tasks require teamwork. And the rest of the world seems very, very far away. CBC News has learned the Canadian military intends to spend more time on land, in the air, and at sea in a significant expansion of military exercises throughout the Arctic.
We want to be in the Arctic on a near permanent basis.
More troops, more often, up to 10 months a year of training, as opposed to the current 5 to 6 months, and not just Canadians.
We've got a number of allies that have voiced their interest to operate with us in the Arctic.
With U.S. President Donald Trump's talk of annexing Canada and threats to take Greenland by military force, this defense expert sees an opportunity for the Liberal government.
Well, one could think imaginatively about how our allies could support Canadian sovereignty.
NATO allies have been invited into the Canadian Arctic before, but only in small numbers. Having more NATO troops, particularly Europeans, present would send a clear, unmistakable message.
If there's political will, there's a lot we can do in the short term that doesn't involve spending billions and billions of dollars on new equipment.
Ottawa has been notoriously reluctant to invite NATO into the north in large numbers, the way Norway does every year. Canada has been feeling isolated, though, and could use friends now more than ever, says this NATO expert.
The one thing that the Canadians have to do is spend more on defence, and very, very quickly, through hosting exercises and other such activities.
There is also a school of thought that says U.S. forces should continue to be invited into the Arctic. By accepting the invitation, experts say Washington is tacitly acknowledging Canadian sovereignty, despite what Donald Trump says. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
A man has filed a lawsuit alleging he was the victim of a scam involving the Yukon Business Nominee Program. He claims he lost more than $500,000 to the scheme. Jackie Hong has more.
Desperate to leave China in 2022, Wenbin Zhang hired Whitehorse immigration consultant Maggie Ozen to help him navigate the nominee program. It allows foreigners to open and run businesses in the territory, offering them a pathway to a nomination for permanent residency. But according to Zhang's lawsuit, he found himself paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to open a Whitehorse convenience store with a business partner, a partner who turned out to be Ozen's husband. The lawsuit alleges the couple used Zhang's money for personal use and benefit. It also claims the business wasn't set up in a way that would allow Zhang to meet program requirements. Vancouver-based lawyer Jimmy Burke is representing Zhang. He says he's seen an uptake in claims against immigration consultants in recent years, but he says the allegations in this case stand out.
We are alleging significant fraud and significant self-dealing and misappropriation of funds. So what I would say that the lawsuit that we're talking about today is a particularly egregious example of a claim against an immigration consultant, if these claims hold up in court.
Ozen, her husband, and another immigration consultant, Mantak Mak, are all named as defendants in the lawsuit. All have filed statements of defense denying any allegations of wrongdoing. The case has yet to go to trial. Jackie Hong, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Two factions of the Northwest Territories Gwich'in Tribal Council appear to have settled part of a court action. The opposing sides have filed a notice in the Northwest Territories Supreme Court that they reached an out-of-court settlement. The Nitat Gwich'in of Inuvik and the Editat Gwich'in of Aklavik had challenged decisions made by Frederick Blake Jr. and his allies in the Gwich'in Gwich'in Council of Sigachik and Tetlik Gwich'in Council of Fort McPherson at a meeting in Edmonton. They argued the meeting was not properly convened and said all of the decisions made by Blake and his supporters were invalid. Those decisions included recognizing Blake as Grand Chief and awarding him back pay. In a recent filing, both sides now agree that Blake is the duly elected Grand Chief and that he officially took office on January 14th. The sides have yet to reach agreement on other decisions made at the meeting. The Yukon Salmon Subcommittee has wrapped up its pre-season meeting in Mayo, and a major topic was whether water licenses are being enforced enough. Some committee members said enforcement is not happening, at least not to the degree that it should be. They say when corporations like Victoria Gold violate their water licenses, there doesn't seem to be major consequences. The committee discussed whether that needs to change.
because we've seen a few incidences in the last year where increasing inspections, particularly in the Mayo area, might have made a big difference, right? And we got Victoria Gold, we've got the Mayo here, we've got Whitehorse Hydro as well. If there was more boots on the ground, I think we'd catch more of this stuff before it harmed fish, right, or water.
The committee considered making an official recommendation to the Yukon government. It would ask for more inspections to be done, particularly in the Mayo area. Dene Nawa and the Yellowknives Dene First Nation kicked off their hide tanning camp yesterday. It's their biggest ever. The CBC's Avery Zingle went to the opening ceremony at the Yellowknife River.
My name is Mila Nakeko. I'm Dene Suthlane from Tl'itliquah First Nations, and we are here at the Dene Nawa YKDFN Hide Camp and Wella Day site outside of Yellowknife. You like that? No, I'm just bad at cutting hair. Our participants are coming in with their hides, their caribou hides and moose hides, and various different states of the process.
What kind of solution is it in?
This hide camp is traditionally held later in the summer and fall, but after years of disruptions, they're doing things differently.
Mandy McDonald, Nitsikasun, Mandaut Sipik, Utsinia, Ininu Nia. I'm Mandy McDonald. I'm the Hide Camp Director at Dene Nawa. You were here today, you could see how excited people were to work on their hides, and we had a really good turnout for the opening ceremony. And working on hides with people is really fun, being outside on the land, and it feels really good. And I think a lot of people look forward to the hide camp every year.
The participants are getting right to it, cutting hair away from the caribou, scraping their hides, hauling water from the Yellowknife River, and hoisting up larger frames for moose hides.
One of the first and most important skills somebody learns in hide tanning is to have a very sharp knife. You have a knife and you keep it really sharp, and it makes the process much easier, and you're learning how to take care of your tools, and you're also learning new skills.
She says elders and master tanners on site are there to give guidance.
It's like builds confidence on the land and land skills and all kinds of different things. So, but it's like having the tools and people to help and knowledge and having elders around and being able to build a relationship with elders, and I think that's also important.
McDonald says enthusiasm for tanning is growing in the north. What started as a small urban hide tanning camp in Sombaquet Park is now this, a large camp with nearly 40 registered participants.
Some people really want to tan their hide, so it's becoming more and more normal these days for people to acquire their own hide and bring it here to get help. Whereas before, 10 years ago, nobody was bringing their own hide. So when we did the Urban Hide Camp, for example, which we did from 2016 to 2019 at Sombaquet Park, nobody really brought their own hides to those things at all. So it was quite chill, because maybe there'd be 4 hides set up and everyone would take a few scrapes or whatever and then take a selfie and then go. But now everybody is bringing hides. I'm not just being cheesy when I say that most people that spend a significant amount of time at a hide camp will say that it's transformational, and whether it's because they're really grateful to learn a cultural practice that their family used to know, or they're just grateful to be able to connect with other people in the community.
The camp runs until May 23rd, and it's open to the public from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Avery Zingle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. We leave you tonight with a look at the Music for Mental Health fundraiser that happened in Yellowknife earlier this week. It featured performances by local bands like Primetime, Flora and the Fireweeds, Agony of the Leaves, and Hughes. All of the proceeds went to mental health awareness, the mental health awareness group at Sir John Franklin High School in Yellowknife. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
And you're the one that lays the sun